everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbale in Abuja. Well, it's been a very interesting week. By the way, it's President Bola Tinubu has just spent his very first week in office, and it's an unusual 1 week for the leader of the most populous black nation on earth, Nigeria. But for a larger population of the country who are feeling the consequences and the pinch of the change in price of petrol, we continue to look at the issues and the aftermath. But there's been a follow-up on the engagement between labor unions and the federal government. Today, the representatives of the federal government met with the Trade Union Congress, TUC, at the State House in Abuja over the removal of fuel subsidy. And this is a follow-up to Wednesday's meeting with the organized labor, which ended in a deadlock. At that meeting, the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC demanded that the federal government go back to status quo by reversing the price of fuel before resuming negotiations with the union. In today's meeting, the federal government's team is led by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume. Others are the Governor of Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, former Governor of Edo State, Kamwe Adams Oshiomhole, and the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mr. Mele Kyari, while the TUC team was led by the TUC President, Mr. Festus Osifo. Labour, the NLC precisely, are threatened to go on an indefinite nationwide strike if the federal government and the NNPC Limited fail to revert to old price of petrol. The issue of subsidy removal has been with us for several years. Remember the very popular petroleum subsidy agitation in 2012. There was a town hall held, and you remember that popular nationwide protest. I mean, the major one that took the attention of the world was the one held in Lagos that shook the city during the President Goodluck Jonathan era. So there was a debate organized by the Newspaper Proprietors Association, a town hall which held at the Muson Center in Lagos. Some of the main characters in the matter at the time are still very much involved in today's conversation. Let me remind you quickly of some of the sound bites of that debate at the Muson Center. This is one from former NLC President Adams Oshiomhole. Take a listen to him.
The question, removal of subsidy, in whose interest? I will say it could be in the interest of everyone. It may also be in the interest of no one. Because the removal by itself does not address the real issue that defines who benefits and who doesn't. Public policy is never value neutral. You cautiously choose your policies, you target who to benefit, and you also target who pays for it. There is no free lunch. When a government settles for providing free benefit to certain class of people, it must at the same time target those who will pay for it.
Well, that was just a portion of what Mr. Adams Oshiomhole said at that time. Well, his very good friend, who was the vice president of the NLC at the time, Comrade Issa Aremu, does not agree with Mr. Oshiomhole's position at the time. Let me remind you of what he said.
Niger Republic, just within 3 years, they built a new refinery. Niger Republic, within 3 years. They have the rigs. They also have they constructed almost 150 kilometers to their refinery. Now their refinery, and at the first day they refine about 20,000 barrel of crude oil. What is good for Niger is even far more imperative for Federal Republic of Nigeria. So if we say the population of Qatar, Saudi is really minimal, we should ask ourselves, what is the level of their crude oil production? Why should we not meet even our OPEC quota? So why are we seeing problems instead of seeing challenges? So if we consume 35 million liters, that cannot be a problem, which means a good market. Then build more refineries, and let's start now.
That is the position of the Labour at the time. I mean, I hope you're getting my drift right now. There are different positions at a time. Now, the CBN governor is one of the panelists from the government side at a time where his status has changed. Sanusi Lamido. Sanusi had a very strong push from the government side. And it was a very viral soundbite coming from that the CBN governor at a time. Take a listen to him.
Let us look at the ideology, and this is where Labour should look. If you subsidize consumption of imported products, what you are doing is creating production facilities, keeping them open abroad, creating jobs abroad, and Labour ideologically, we talk about ideology, Labour should be in the forefront of stopping those subsidies and subsidizing domestic production. Don't subsidize the importation of petroleum products. Subsidize those who want to set up refineries. Give them power. So this is the first ideological issue. It's not about economics ideology.
Well, those are some of the it was a long, it wasn't even one event, different debate at that time. And don't forget, even during the military days, the issue of subsidy was a very major issue. Whenever this came up, it was a very touchy turning and a very touchy matter to touch at that time. So today I have a former governor of Edo State, Comrade Adams Oshomole, senator-elect, and a former NLC president who has been sitting in on behalf of the federal government at the meetings with Labour. He joins us live here in our studio. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Shehu, for having me.
It's almost difficult to describe all your roles because of the context of what we are going to be discussing tonight, which is the fuel subsidy. Today, there was another meeting, a follow-up from the last Wednesday's meeting. But obviously, there was the absence of NLC. Do you know why?
No idea, because the decision to meet today was agreement between the NLC, the TUC, and the government representative. Because that was the first meeting to exchange ideas and side out various parties what they thought and all of that. And we were to meet today to exchange further ideas and see how we can find a common ground. Now, I'm not in a position to tell you why they were not there.
So, what was the agreement today? What did you agree today, or was another deadlock?
I don't think when you're having a conversation, it's between agreement. It's not. You refer. I mean, it is not that you agree or you have a deadlock. I would say we have a very productive conversation today. Productive in the sense that the Trade Union Congress came up with a list of specific demands which they will want the government to address. And I believe that a lot of those demands are doable, they are viable, and they make a lot of sense.
What are these demands?
And government in return agreed to look at this comprehensively and revert back on Tuesday with a view to finding a common solution. Of course, there are a couple of them. I will just speak to one or two or three.
Okay, that's good.
The first is the fact that when you increase wage, you withdraw subsidy, you try to make some savings. In the case of Nigeria, it's even now much more serious because we're now talking of bogus figures like 6 trillion, 7 trillion naira in a year. And so if you are going to save 6-7 trillion in a year, that sounds good. If the policy implication is that you save, unfortunately, the fact of that saving means that the cost of PMS is going to go up. And therefore, those who operate commercial vehicles or own private vehicles will have to pay more. And so passengers have to pay more to go to work and to return from work. farmers have to pay more to go to the market to sell their farm produce, and also pay more to return back home. So, in a sense, there is no question that removing the subsidy means some level of increase in the cost of living beyond the issue of transportation. It will cascade to every aspect of life.
So
in many cities. So now, how do you deal with that? Why is Labour opposed to subsidy? Labour is opposed to withdrawal of subsidy because of the consequential increase in the cost of living. So now that you have done it, then you have to deal with the other side of it, which is adjust my wages in a manner that will enable me cope with the increases in the cost of living, so that overall I protect my living standard. I think that is very, very legitimate. Because the business of Labour is to protect, not just protect living standard, but to even improve living standard. Everywhere around the world, nobody presides over liquidation of his own constituency. So I think it is legitimate for Labour to say, if you have withdrawn the subsidy, and as a consequence I pay much more to go to work, and in no time, the prices of everything will escalate to some extent in varying degrees, depending on your location, then you should also adjust my cost, my take-home pay. Number two, if you go to make this amount of saving, then you should be able to plug back part of that savings to the wheat sector to deal with not just cost of transportation, but I talk about cost of living, of which transportation is only one element. So I don't think anybody can fault the demand of Labour. I certainly think that there's a lot of merit in it. Now, the issue is then, by how much? Now, that is something that has to be discussed. The second is, you have to deal with the supply side of transportation. Sometimes, transportation, cost of transportation can go up, not because of cost of PMS, but simply based on the law of supply and demand. So government can help to influence the supply side by procuring more mass transit buses and give it to those who have the know-how to manage them, including state government investing in mass transit transportation, so that on the supply side there are enough buses, and therefore nobody will take undue advantage to mark up cost of transportation in a manner that we create a lot of hardship, all over the country. Again, I believe this is doable, and it's not a new ground to be broken, to be done before. The challenge has been that these policies are not sustained. But what that means is that this time around, if you recognize that there's need to assist on the supply side, then you will have to ensure that you put the mass transit in the hands of those who have the know-how to manage them. And they are not given away as a token. They're given away, you are assisted to procure it, but you have to also manage the fleet in a way that you can refund or repay the money that is made available to you to the procurement or government bus purchase, and then give it to those who can run them efficiently.
So these are some of the issues raised.
Just some of them,
and it does look like the federal government team agreed with those positions. But you have to go back and look at them and get back on Tuesday. That's the plan, isn't it?
Yeah, because you see, any day if you ask me, and I think even the president has spoken to that, you can't increase my cost of living and ask me to find and abandon me to myself. The president himself has said he is committed, he believes that the minimum wage should be increased. And not only it had to be increased. However, because we are in a democracy, but even in a dictatorship, what now constitutes a realistic minimum wage must be subject of negotiations by the social partners. It's not something that the president can decree. We pass the era of president decrees that follows. So it has to be the result of negotiation between the trade unions, the organized private sector, usually represented by the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, and of course you also want the state government to be able to to be part of it, because they too have to pick up the bill arising from whatever agreement is reached, so that whatever agreement that comes out is one that benefit from the input of all those who will be affected by it one way or the other.
So immediately, the low-hanging fruit are what you're looking at, and perhaps a longer-term measure to be able to cushion the effect. But these low-hanging fruit include maybe providing mass transit transportation buses or vehicles. Is that it?
Yes, plus. I mean, you can increase wages tomorrow, but I'm not sure you can procure 1,000 buses tomorrow, because they are not assembled here. Even if they are assembled here, you can't assemble them within 48 hours. But none of the options, including wage increase, that you could do without the benefit of time.
So the question here, comrade,
Yeah.
is that the price of petrol went up by well over 150%. So the question is, by what percentage will the wage increase be?
That is a question for the social partners. That is a matter for the workers' unions, as represented by the Trade Union, Nigeria Labour Congress, and the Trade Union Congress. On the one hand, the Nigeria private sector employers, and the federal government and the state government. Because you are looking at what determines the rate of pay. You're looking at cost of living. You're also looking at the resources available once you are committed to an agreement. One of the things that this president must never do, and which he promised he won't do, is that Nigeria must break away from the era in which government sign agreement in the morning, and in the evening when it is time to cash the check, they tell you that they don't have ability to pay. Now, to put an end to that, you must run the numbers. And for example, how much am I saving by stopping this so-called subsidy? You have the figures. What is my current wage bill? You have the figures. If I increase the wages across board by X percentage, what does it translate to? So if I take X from the savings and put here, what does it translate to? So you have to run those numbers, so that at the end of the day, what you agree to, on payday, that money must be transferred to the bank account of each and every worker. Because put an end to signing agreement, and on payday, there are stories about ability to pay. Because
running the numbers, I remember that the Minister of Finance and the CBN governor was at the time, and I'll pull you back to the conversation of 2012, which is not totally, there isn't so much departure of the situation of the Nigerian economy and compared to now. Nigeria borrowed well over $1 trillion at that time, and it happened that, Nigeria was paying, borrowed about 800 million or something at that time, and they had about $1 trillion or so to pay for subsidy. And the CBN governor was making reference to that, to the fact that what we are even paying, what it costs Nigeria to pay for subsidy is higher than the money that Nigeria went to borrow. So the question of whether or not the past government said we had a revenue problem. Nigeria does not have as much. You look at the overhead costing Nigeria way over 2 trillion naira. Can we afford to be able to increase wage when we have a revenue problem at the moment? So the question is whether or not this idea was properly thought through before the president made his statement on 29th of May.
Oh, yes. You were very active during the electioneering campaign. If there is one issue in which all the leading presidential candidates had agreement on, it is that they all agreed that the subsidy will go. I remember the then candidate, Peter Obi, saying he will remove it the very first day. Candidate Atiku said the same thing. Candidate Bola Tinubu said the same thing. So in other words, I can even argue that since these three leading presidential candidates all told Nigerians, look, if you elect me, I will, among other things, remove the subsidy. And Nigeria proceeded to vote for them. It is arguable if they did it, that it casted their vote, they did not anticipate that those statements will be implemented. I think the issue, Shehu, is not whether you have revenue. If you are borrowing several trillion, assuming, I don't know the source of this funding, other than what we read in the newspapers, and they are not often correct sometimes. If Nigeria is going to save about 6 or 7 trillion by withdrawing subsidy, then there is no question that you can take part of that and put it in the wage sector. Because those savings will go to the federation account, which will be distributed to the 3 tiers of government. So every tier of government, we have more money, and therefore should be able to meet the consequential increase in wages. Because of government, the primary purpose of government is the welfare of the people. So you cannot expect to, you can't take decisions that you know will impact on cost of living without thinking through how you will deal with the consequences. And I'm happy that President Tinubu has said he's ready. He believes that there is need to review the national minimum wage.
Would the FG consider reverting to the old price? Because that's one of the demands. Would the federal government consider reverting to the old price? That's one of the demands, at least for this week.
I think most Nigerians are aware. Even those who just watch channel television, even if they don't watch any other media. But this year's budget, the wisdom of the government at the time the budget was crafted, did not provide for subsidy throughout 2023 that we end in June. So, where is the money? So if you say revert back, then you have to knock the doors of your lenders and say you want to lend again.
But the FG has been defaulting based on what NNP, the federal government has been defaulting for several months. That's what the NNP
defaulting
said.
What?
In paying the subsidy. You made reference that they have been budget for it.
So
but the federal government have not been meeting their own side of the deal.
You've answered the question. So if the federal government have been defaulting, should this new government continue with a bad habit? My answer would be no.
But does this government...
Don't offer what you can't afford.
Has this government planned properly for this idea?
Pardon?
Has this government under Bola Tinubu planned properly for this idea? Because one of the issues that has been raised is, has this government thought it through properly, made the right process and go through the right process before making the pronouncement?
Well, if your intention is to turn me to the federal government spokesperson, I will respectfully decline.
But you were sitting in the federal government team.
Yeah. That does not make me anything other than who I am. I am just a senator elect at the moment. But I don't think that is the issue. You know better than that. I think what you should be discussing is Nigerians are more or less those who understand the workings of the macro, those who understand the huge challenge that we face as a nation. It's no longer controversial. I mean, it is not a coincidence that you find 3 leading presidential candidates all agree that the subsidy has to go. And yet Nigeria went to vote for those 3. So don't take it beyond that. Now, when you make a policy, you sit back and discuss all the ramifications of the policy. Now, I believe the president knew that in any case, he didn't have any option because there's no more any budgetary provision for it. And you are even the one reminding me that even what was budgeted for, according to NNPC, that the federal government defaulted, which means it was all paperwork and we were just buying time. How much more time can you buy? In leadership, sometimes you have to take tough but necessary decisions in order to save the patient. When doctors carry out surgery, they know that there will be some pain, but the surgery is necessary in order to keep the patient alive. He will suffer pain in the short run, but in the long run, you are hoping that he will live longer. I think those are the issues, Shehu. It's not about whether you thought properly, you did it properly. The vital thing, the important thing for me is nobody should lay claim to monopoly of solution. And that is why the government is ready and decided to appoint some group of persons and empower them to go into dialogue with organized labor, because the response of labor is legitimate, namely that this decision will lead to higher cost of living. My take-home pay can no longer take me home. Therefore, you need to do XYZ. Whether you revise the policy today and bring it back in June, what is the difference? Now, you also know better. Public policy should be formed by common sense. It's not about ego. You know that assuming today the government was to announce, I'm revising the policy until June, the marketer will start hoarding and the price will go even higher. During the last fuel crisis, I found myself paying 1,000 naira a liter in a place in Edo State where, I ran out of oil and I had to refuel in order to be able to get back home. And I wasn't the only one. Many people went through that. And you see people sleeping in petrol stations and so on and so forth. So once it is in the air that you are going to, from so date, you are going to change prices, hoarding will result. The Nigeria state does not have the capacity to jail all those who resort to certain habits that can be considered to be economic sabotage, which hoarding, in my view, represent. And so we have had to live with these marketers holding the country to ransom, cutting corners, and so on. In the city, they can please people like Shehu by ensuring the NNPC station sell at a true price, but 2 kilometers outside Abuja, you want PMS, and your tank is dry, you pay the rate that the marketer is willing to sell. And you can't get police, even the police people, police officers pay the same price. I think we should just discuss, really, what I thought you want to discuss is, now that the president has formalized the announcement, I use formality because it wasn't budgeted for. So, stated or not, the subsidy has already been withdrawn. And it is not a sudden withdrawal because at the time the budget was announced, we were told as a people that the subsidy will end in June. So it is not a decision that this president had to take. It was about acknowledging what appeared to be a fait accompli that he inherited.
Comrade,
but let me also say, even if he didn't inherit it, the question to you is, I think we should be talking about having withdrawn the subsidy, Mr. President. Can you now guarantee us that our children in universities will no longer have to stay at home for 9 months, 1 month, 1 year, because government is unable to pay lecturers the salaries that they have promised? Because if we are going to take this pain, there's always a trade-off. What are we to expect from government? Mr. President, are we going to ensure that we now have more resources to maintain those parts of federal roads that have failed completely, like the road between Binia and Ekpoma to Kogi? And don't accuse me of measuring that area because I have to speak to where I know. That for 10 years, over 4 presidents are unable to fix that road. We can't accept that as a way of life.
Comrade, let me jump in quickly.
Yeah. I think the real issue should be, if you withdraw the subsidy now, what will you give? First, the short run, I mean, talking of low-hanging fruits. The worker is going to go to work tomorrow. How does he cope? It's a practical question.
Yeah. So, the reason why I'm a bit critical with you, because as a 2-term governor, policy decisions are procedural.
Yeah.
You think it, and you plan it, and you strategize it before even voicing it or before acting on it. And that's the reason why I'm asking that if this policy were to be executed, I mean, there should have been some plans on the ground to cushion the effect of the policy. But let me quickly take you on asking.
On that one.
Yeah. So,
see, as I advise you, Shehu, don't try to, don't tell me to government spokesperson.
What was your role on that committee? What was your role on that committee? You were sitting in for the first
don't personalize.
So you should be able to
discussing serious national issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not a personal issue. I only offered because whether you like it or not, even when I was governor of Edo State, that agreement which ASU talks about, that the federal government over the years has not been able to implement, the late President Shehu Yar'Adua invited me to help to midwife a dialogue, you know, to put an end to ASU strike at the time. And we crafted that agreement, and the two sides signed. I was only a witness. And I'm shocked that government after government is not able to pay. Now, this government has made a pronouncement. It has proceeded to immediately set up a committee. And we have said, look, this is not like what government used to do in the past, in which you set up a minimum wage committee, for example. It sits for 2 years without agreement. This president recognizes that the effect of the withdrawal is already here. People are already going through some level of discomfort, and therefore there has to be immediate solution to it. Now, that immediate solution is what we're discussing. And the fact that we are meeting on Tuesday again, you know, shows that clearly we realize that this is not one of those things you want to buy time, because it has real negative impact on particularly the most vulnerable group, right? But we have solutions to it. Right. Because you're going to make savings, so take from that savings, or even if it is, you'll be borrowing as we do. I mean, if you are spending 94% of your total revenue to service debts, what it means is that even the salary you are paying now, that you are paying from borrowed funds, it simply means that you have to borrow less. So whatever it is, you can leverage some revenue and improve wages.
Comrade, quickly, let me ask
pushing the cost of living. I think it's legitimate. I think it is doable. It's not something that you want to spend 2 months, 3 months negotiating. You can fix it as quickly as you can. So get the Ministry of Finance to roll out the numbers. What is our monthly wage bill? What is our annual wage bill? And Mr. Ministry of Petroleum or NNPC, how much did you say we are saving? 7 trillion. Okay, if we take 1 trillion or 2 trillion and put it in the wage sector, we'll make these people happy, we'll compensate for the high cost of living. We still have 5 trillion saved. Now, from this 5 trillion, what are my other priorities? Because government and leadership is about priorities. Talking about my experience as a governor. Okay, I have promised the Nigerian people that the child of the poor will no longer spend 5 or 6 or 7 years in university for a 4-year degree program. And the problem has been resource gap. I'm putting 1 trillion. The last time I listened to the immediate past Minister of State for Labor, he said what ASU was demanding was around 900 and something billion. If that is true, and you're wasting or borrowing 7 trillion naira, I will have no difficulty taking 1 trillion and put to the university sector. Get lecturers properly paid, get the lab properly equipped, get lecture rooms renovated, and ensure that our young ones are taught in a conducive environment. Right. So that although you have this, you have had to pay a little more here, we are taking measures first to cushion cost of living. You are also addressing one of those things that in a way is creating a two Nigeria where only the children of the rich, you know, have their academic calendar uninterrupted, and the children of the poor have had to spend endless years pursuing 2, 3, 4 more years for a degree that...
So quickly, I have a few questions that I'd like you to help us tackle quickly. How soon can we have a wage review?
I think the thinking, now I have to use the word the thinking because I'm just from the meeting and I'm coming here because I have to obey you. Now, I have not had the privilege. I am obedient, but I mean obedient in the true sense of the word.
Okay.
Not ill-conceived, ill-thought political obedience, no. Politically, I'm an agitator. I'm not obedient. Everything has to be questioned and interrogated. Not to political opportunism, no. Lord, don't take me to the realm of politics. Elections are over. Now, this is the time for governance.
I see that your content has changed as soon as I asked you that question.
No, because
don't let me take you there. No, so let's go to the question.
Let me answer your question, yeah.
Now,
from the negotiation table, I am here. I have not had the opportunity to join my other colleagues to report back to Mr. President the outcome of today's meeting. But the general thinking of the panel which the president has put in place and flowing from our understanding of the president's commitment to address the social purpose of government is that he is willing, and he has said so, that he will review the minimum wage. And the time to do it is now. I think that Nigerians should expect, I hope, that within the week, the committee should be in place. The Minimum Wage Act also provides for the composition of the committee that reviews minimum wage. That can be put in place within the week and given limited time within which to reach an agreement that is implementable.
All right. So let me, because I know that sometimes
if you do that, by your next payday, you will have some level of some income that will address this. Number two, there are also other things you could do. I'm not too sure because some of this is guarded by law. You can give tax break, you can reduce the tax burden of certain categories of workers. All those are in the basket. Yeah. Because there are many ways to increase a man's take-home pay. Because the difference between gross wage and net oftentimes is taxes. So if you are paying 20% of your salary as tax, and I reduce that to 15%, or I reduce it to 10%, I would have given you more money without decreasing your salary. There are many ways. If there is will, there will always be a way. But the point to make sure is that Labour is right to demand appropriate compensation relative to the high cost of living arising from the withdrawal of subsidy. Government, in responding, must respond timeously. And in doing so, it must run the numbers and ensure that once it puts pen to paper to say, I agree, that at the end of the month, the money is paid. We must put an end to signing agreement in the morning and coming in the evening to tell stories that the economy cannot sustain it. No. And incidentally, our president is a man of figures. He was an accountant. He was a treasurer in a multinational company, so he understands figures. Right. He doesn't need people like us who are not even into the world of figures.
Let's take a pause. We'll go on a break, and when we come back, we'll take the closing moment with Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, because if Labour stands a ground, especially NLC that was not present at that meeting, what would the FG do? And they've given an ultimatum on this one. TUC was present, NSU was not present. We look at some of these dynamics as a final thought of Comrade Adams Oshiomhole before we go into yet another burden that President Tinubu will be facing: issue of security, bandits attack in Zamfara, unrest in Plateau State. What way for the new president? Stay with me, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone. Our closing moment with Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, former Edo State Governor, is also former NLC President. He was one of the members of the federal government team that met with the TUC today. So thank you so much indeed for your time. I'd like to ask you, there is, NLC was not present at that meeting, and one needs to, if you're planning, you need to plan ahead. They've threatened that there will be an indefinite nationwide strike. Added to the pain of the increment in the price of petrol, that will be a lot of trouble for a lot of Nigerians. Because one of the demands is that they do want a reversal of the price increase. And Mr. Falana said on this program that it was illegal for the NNPC to have adjusted the price. So in all of these cases, as the federal government, what are you thinking about the issue of the possibility of a nationwide indefinite strike?
Well, I don't. I have led, maybe in recent history, and probably on record as I've led many national strikes. And there's something you don't embark on strike out of fun. I think what the NSC want is a solution. And the way to solution is to talk. Now, if you run away from talking, because even when the strike is on and you don't talk, the strike then becomes an end in itself. It's only talking that will produce agreement. And when I was president of NLC, before we go on strike, we will organize negotiations. I think NSC have their calculations. Because I am committed forever to standing and defending the legitimate interests of organized labor, I'm not going to be able to sit down here and try to imagine why NSC thought they would rather give ultimatum rather than resume discussions today, because there is nothing in the books that says don't talk. Talking is the name. Evil generals, after battle, they sit back and discuss how to manage the territories that they have conquered. So I guess they have their calculation, but I'm very hopeful that between now and Tuesday, we are meeting on Tuesday, and the whole idea is, look, let's find a solution.
All right.
There is no denying the fact that there are consequential issues arising from the decision. I think everybody recognizes that. And that you don't just recognize this and lament it. You need to take bold and imaginative steps to deal with it. And there are very many viable tools that can be deployed. Because who consumes fuel more? The one that hurts me really, but which unfortunately, hard as we try, I'm not sure how successful we were, is the fact that kerosene, which is exclusively for the poor, is gone out of subsidy basket. Diesel, which the mass transit buses uses, is gone. It's only the PMS that everybody is talking about. And workers don't drive those vehicles that consume 1 liter of PMS in 5 kilometers. So, see, if the country will move out of the economic mess in which we are in, there are bold and painful short decision that has to be taken. For example, you and I know that in the name of subsidy, you have a whole outfit called Petroleum Equalization Fund, which says expressly, talking about law, and I'm sure Femi will know this law. I don't know the A to Z of it, which says that the price of PMS in Lagos will be the same in Maiduguri, will be the same in Sokoto, will be the same in Port Harcourt. And to achieve this uniformity, federal government appropriate billions of naira every year. And yet, you and I know that we have never achieved, uniform price has never prevailed. And so people simply pocket this money. In cleaning up all the leakages in the system, blocking all the leakages, clean up the system, and ensuring that the Nigerian taxpayers get value for money. There are many things you have to do so that you have enough resources to deal with those things that will impact positively on the private sector with regards to power supply, for example. We are lamenting the level of unemployment. We can't lament it away. We have to get it, return the manufacturing sector back. And for the manufacturing sector to come back, they cannot be diesel-driven. They cannot be generator-driven. You must fix power. There are a whole range of things you need to do. You must sustain the maintenance of federal highways. You must continue with the rail system, but maybe redesign in a way that it addresses the economy hubs, so that we move away from this primitive tradition in which you are putting trucks, everything on the road, and so the road don't last 6 months and they break down and you have so many people dying on our federal highways every day. I think there's a lot that can be done. What is important is to have the goodwill. I believe the NLC has a reason to be angry, but it is when you're angry that the test of leadership comes in.
Right. Thank you
because
so much.
we need solution which will be formed by clear thinking, so that the constituency that NLC represents will find relief that will not make life so unbearable without inflicting more damage even to themselves. Strike is not a tea party. I'm sure that it is not with pleasure that they made those decisions. And I believe they will between now and Tuesday, I hope they will participate in Tuesday meeting. And if the meeting finds solutions to what they want, I expect that they can have a review.
All right. Comrade Adams Oshomole, former governor of Edo State and former NLC president, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
You're welcome.
Well, I mean, I've had people who have espoused the fact that government also need to adjust the cost of governance. And this is a new government. We are hoping how that is going to also be portrayed. Well, let's switch gears now and talk about issue of security. Bandits have attacked Sakida, Magaji, and Jambako communities of the Maradun local government area in Zamfara State, killing no fewer than 10 persons. Sources from the Jambako community confirmed the tragic incident to China's television today, saying that several others sustained various injuries. And in reaction to the latest attack, the Zamfara State Governor Dauda Lawa condemned the attack on the two communities in the Maradun local government area of the state. Well, this is a new governor that is dealing with this issue. But another governor is that of the Plateau State, who is dealing with trying to address a possible reprisal from the attacks that have happened in his state. Well, let's get some perspective to this. These are national security issues. But how will a Bola Tinubu administration deal with these issues? It's just coming into power. When will he be able to stand up to these issues? Let me bring in Mr. Bulama Bukati, who is a lawyer and a security expert. He joins us virtually from London. Thank you so much, Mr. Bukati, for your time tonight. Well, new administration, old problems. How do you think Bola Tinubu will address the issue of security, banditry in the Northwest rearing his head again?
Yeah, I mean, you are right, Sheun, and the stories you cited on the top are just an example of the dire insecurity that has become endemic in our country, unfortunately. It is not just the northwestern part of Nigeria. We know that the north central is also in a huge problem. The southeast is boiling. The northeast, where Boko Haram has been operating, is still having lots of security challenges, and it is fair to say insecurity is unfortunately continuing to be endemic in our country. As for what the new administration should do, I think the administration itself was very clear in their manifesto and in the president's inauguration speech that insecurity or restoring security is their topmost priority. And I think they are right to say that, not just because our constitution requires the security and welfare of Nigerians to be the primary duty of government, but also because the realities on the ground show that if we do not tackle insecurity in Nigeria, insecurity is going to make our country no more. It's going to continue to destroy our lives and properties, and we know that the economy and social life will never develop anywhere in the country if insecurity continues to be as endemic as it is. And therefore, the president must hit the ground running. And I think the first thing the president needs to do, just as your introduction alluded to, is to get right the appointment of the National Security Advisor. Because what you need in the Nigerian security architecture is a complete review that will end in the development of a holistic national strategic plan. And to do that, you need a professional that understands not just national security from the military perspective or from the kinetic perspective, but someone who also understands the socio-economic aspects of insecurity and also understands national security very well. In addition to that, Sheun, you also need someone who understands cyber security and also foreign policy and economic security, because food insecurity is part of insecurity and it can fuel the kind of insecurity we are talking about. So you need a professional who understands these issues very well. And if you looked at our appointments for the office of the National Security Advisor, from 1993 to date, we have had 9 national security advisors. All of them except one came from the military. All of the 9 except one, Samaila Gorzo, who came from the intelligence agencies, came from the military. And I am sure they have done their best, but it is clear that their best was not good enough. Because with every successive national security advisor, what we saw was the worsening of insecurity in Nigeria. And therefore, I think the president needs to think deeply this time around. And I think he will do well to look for a professional from outside the military. And it is not because the military is not important. The military is important, but it is just one small part of our security problems. Most of the security problems we are facing in Nigeria today are internal security issues that require community policing, that require internal, stakeholders talking to each other, working with each other, planning with each other, and implementing that plan together. Unfortunately, someone coming from the military comes from a military background, and we know that the military mentality, however much you try to dispel it, will continue to haunt them, and therefore they would not be able to look at the other ramifications of insecurity and work with our 16 security and law enforcement agencies in the country. And so my advocacy is that the president should look for someone from the intelligence agencies or from the police, and they should take politics out of this. Insecurity is a very serious issue, and it threatens the corporate existence of our country. And therefore, the office of the National Security Advisor should not be seen as a payment for the political effort of anyone or for the political contribution of anyone. The president must take politics out of it, look for the best brain he can find, whether he or a she, and entrust them with that responsibility.
All right. Let me jump in quickly, Mr. Bukati. So there are immediate need to address the issues, and I'm very sure that the president would have been getting the briefing. It does look like he spoke tough to the service chiefs, and when they responded, they said the president had asked them to crush these and attend to these, that he would not tolerate any kind of non-coordination within their ranks. That looks to me like someone who wanted result. But the question is that it's beyond talking. It also goes to the very heart of the matter. But we've been hearing stories flying around as to some people who are being penciled for that kind of role, and those who have criticized, those who have spoken up for that kind of person. But the question is, what could be the immediate, what we saw in Zamfara, for example, and what we're seeing in Plateau? What would be the president's immediate action that you'll be suggesting?
I mean, you are right, Sean. The president has started talking tough. Unfortunately, this is their first meeting, and we know that as the administration progresses, the president will get more and more busy. We know that he will be dealing with protests next week, and therefore, in the beginning, he may be able to be meeting the service chiefs, regularly, but as time goes, it will be very difficult for him, and that's why he needs to get his national security advisor right. As regards to what you need to do immediately is to ensure that the military effort continues to tackle the insecurity in the country. And to do that, you need good logistics. For example, the case of Zamfara that you cited, I was listening to interviews with some of the victims on BBC Hausa, and they said they reported the matter, that's the attack to the immediate military outpost that was immediate to their community. But the military outpost, according to them, told them that they would not be able to be there because their vehicle that is in charge of operations like those was not around. You can see that there is clear logistical problem, and those problems will have to be fixed. Number two, I think the president needs to set out clear priorities, clear demands for the service chiefs, and give them deadlines within which to achieve them. Number three, you need holistic coordination, because what we saw under the Buhari administration was the federal government acting in isolation of the state governments, and each of the state governments doing what they want. President Tinubu must not allow that to happen. They must ensure that all stakeholders work together, plan together, and implement their plans together. Number four, and this the president has already started, is for the president to ensure that all the security and law enforcement agencies, not just the service chiefs, he spoke to the service chiefs this week, but he also needs to ensure that all the other security and law enforcement agencies, customs and immigration, the NDLEA, and other security and law enforcement agencies are all coordinated and are working together. Number five, and maybe I would stop there because I don't want to dominate your program, is for the president to ensure that security and intelligence cooperations with our neighbors, that's Niger, Benin, Chad, and Cameroon, has been strengthened and is made functional. Because unless and until you stop the supply of drugs, of weapons, and of ultra-powerful Chinese motorcycle from across the borders into Nigeria, you are not going to stop this problem.
We have 20 seconds to go, but you mentioned the issue of this NSA, if you can quickly, because there are a lot of people who work for Bola Tinubu to win the election. Some of them will be want payment. Some said, look, the role of the economic advisor or the economic minister and that of the NSA cannot be political. What kind of thing should the president be looking at? Round rows in round pegs, or what do they call it?
I mean, I completely agree. It cannot be a political payment for any politician because they have contributed in one way or the other. And so what you need is, number one, someone who is a distinguished professional in intelligence or in internal policing. Number two, that person must be proven to be someone who is not corrupt, because we know people who have held positions of power who became corrupt later. Number three, you need someone who would command the respect of the service chiefs as well as the heads of the intelligence agencies and the security and law enforcement agencies, but also someone who will hit the ground running, and someone who understands the communities, the stakeholders, and will be able to work with stakeholders in the security architecture in order to deliver our country from this epidemic.
Mr. Bulama Bukati, it's always a pleasure having you on the program. A senior fellow at the Tony Blair from the Institute in London, and a lawyer and security consultant. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Sean. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. And that's our show for today, everyone. And thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye-bye.